Gareth. I'm one of the founders and directors of First Intuition. I'm sure some of you might have crossed paths with me over the last few years. I've been training accountants for just over 25 years now. And it's fair to say the last few years, in fact, I'd say the last 4 or 5 years, I've probably seen more change than the previous couple of decades. In many respects, changes to syllabuses that we teach at First Intuition, changes to the way trainees are funded. I'm sure some of you will be familiar with the apprenticeship programs, but particularly changes to the way accountants actually even do their jobs, and therefore the skill set that accountants need. I think we still need double entry skills. We still need to understand how tax consolidations work, but we have a huge host of new technologies, new platforms, new software, new digital finance technologies that are becoming part and parcel, I think, of the accountancy sector. And you know, we run these regular digital lunch and learns to try and raise some of these questions, help decipher some of what's going on. I think there are big challenges with even something like AI. I mean, AI, how broad or as narrow do you want that to be? I talk to clients and I hear AI coming up a lot, and I get the sense there's a little bit of anxiety whether people should be a first mover, which obviously has its risks and costs, or should you go a bit slower, but then you don't want to get left behind by what is moving really, really quickly, actually. So please, during the webinar, use the chat box to give your own insight, your own experiences, ask questions. It's a reasonably nice small group, so I'm sure our speakers won't mind if you turn off your mute and blurt out any of your thoughts during the session. But I'm going to be handing over to a couple of experts in this area who are going to lead us through a bit of a discussion. My own colleague, Louisa, who I'll hand over to, and don't be put off by his choice of sartorial wear. We do have an expert with us in Chris Argent today.
You're a fine one to talk.
And I was going to say, delightful to see that I'm not the only one with slightly dubious taste in tops, and I appreciate your efforts, Chris. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to this thoroughly. Really want to hear the discussion. As I said, please, everyone chip in, use the chat box. I'm going to see people already introducing themselves. So we've seen Richard and Lorraine. Lorraine, hi, I haven't seen you for ages and ages, actually. Hi, Kirsty, good to see you. But Louisa, if I can just hand straight over to you, please.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much indeed, Gareth. Yes, I'm feeling as though I'm a little bit muted in my choice of jumper today. I think I'm going to have to go and together a louder jumper for our next session, our next digital lunch and learn. So I'm Louisa. I lead our digital program at First Intuition. And within that program, we run a number of courses for people right through from trainee. We've got some level 3 apprentices doing some digital courses with us right now, right through to people qualified, right up to board level, doing a variety of digital courses on some tech topics and also some non-tech aspects to do with tech. Also, I do quite a few talks on the topic as well, anything to do with digital and AI and the growth mindset. I'm always keen to get involved. And also with my job, I do quite a lot of chatting to people in tech and in finance. So it's always great to hear what people are doing or what they're not doing, what the fears are. And I do attend quite a few tech conferences as well, which is great, sort of hearing what's going on. So in terms of today, many thanks to everybody for joining us either to this session live, and then also if you're listening and catch up later on, it's great to have you along with us. Any questions, I think we've already said, do pop them in chat. And Gareth mentioned if you want to unmute and speak up, that's fantastic. And be really great to hear your thoughts. And we'll definitely cover any questions at the end, if not along the way. So today, I'm honoured to have Chris with us, Chris Argent, who heads up Gen CFO. We've been working with Chris for a number of years. Really great to have you along today, Chris. Perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And Gareth, I learned everything I know from you when it comes to dress, so appreciate that. So yeah, I started out as an accountant. I started out in business and worked my way up to be an FD, divisional FD. And something happened in my career at that point. It was a fraud, and I won't go into it today, but that was the seed for what happened next. And I moved into finance transformation in large organizations probably about 15, 20 years ago. And it was a really great learning period for me because I managed to join a few companies that were investing heavily on the technology side. And at that point in time, people were not interested in moving kind of backwards towards the technology. They wanted to move forwards towards the business. Now the whole world's changed. Everyone wants to know how you sort of leverage technology, and it's a sort of end-to-end transformation. But while I was doing that sort of change into transformation and trying to bring a lot of use cases to the accounting and finance teams, on behalf of the CFO, I set up a community, a LinkedIn group, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And now I am full-time, of about 4 or 5 years ago, on managing that community, which is called Generation CFO, Gen CFO. And one of the differences with our community is that we believe that to remain high performing, to remain a sustainable business, you need to start leveraging technology. You need to start understanding how to leverage it and implement it successfully. And yeah, I run that on a day-to-day basis, and happy to try and debunk this a little bit today, because we talk a lot about the realities and the practicalities rather than just the hype.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. Thank you very much indeed, Chris. Well, yeah, as you say, we're here to talk about AI and automation today, and very much how it works or doesn't work in the world of accounting and finance. So it'd be really great to kick off with your thoughts, actually, as you were talking about the hype and the reality. Perhaps we can dig a bit deeper into that in terms of AI and automation.
Yeah, and also it'd be good to get people's sort of opinions on this as we go. I've just had a quick look in the chat there. We've got people in practice, we've got people in public sector, we've got people in commerce. So it's a really sort of good way of getting opinion from people, accountants and FDs by the looks of it. So do put your comments in the chat, and I'll try and answer as many questions as I go. But look, as Gareth said, there's a lot of hype about this. It's actually, the topic's been around for a very long time. AI itself, in its simplest terms, is just the catch-all sort of phrase, artificial intelligence, for a lot of things relating to science and technology that's trying to mimic human behavior, or human sort of cognitive processes. And there's loads of different subsets of it. It's always evolving. And when I had our initial conversations a couple of years ago, there was no such thing as generative AI at that point. Now we have a whole field of Gen AI, to talk about today. So the first part I would say is a lot of this started with the business analytics boom, probably 20 years ago, when we started to realize we could bring statistics and mathematics together and data and come up with algorithms and ways of predicting the future, which is obviously really helpful in business and business planning generally, whether you're in practice or whether you're in business. That then led to almost like a discipline forming within business that we need data scientists. And, for a while that was classed as the sexiest role in the world, I think, according to Harvard Business Review. And actually, on that note, when I started this, a lot of this conversation was hypothetical. People didn't quite make the connection between how technology would impact the finance industry. I just want to quickly share this link in the chat, because I feel like we've arrived with this role. Right now, there is a role being advertised by OpenAI for a strategic finance data scientist. It's being paid $250,000 if anyone wants it. And this is the culmination, I think, of the journey that I was hoping for in accounting and finance. It is the combination of accountancy skills, of data skills, of business skills, and bringing those things together, into what they're calling a strategic finance data scientist, to deliver insights to the business, deliver predictions to the business, deliver forecasts to the business. And it's right there. It's happened today, right? And it's not a small amount of money if you've got all those skills. So a lot of people are at the start of this journey, but if you had have started 10 years ago when I first started shouting about it, then maybe you've got that job now. So that sort of machine learning space then evolved into an automation sort of hype bubble where we had processes being automated. And I called sort of automation and robotic process automation the macro, because I know that people are used to Excel more than anything. I'm sure we've all done a macro in our times. And it's the same sort of technology. It's just a much bigger version of that. So a macro. And what it allows you to do is simply, almost automate the keystrokes on your keyboard for a bot to go and run that process for you. And I think a lot of people have experienced that in the software that they bought. It's actually doing it for them in the back end and spitting out some kind of matching result. But then they started to overlay the machine learning on that. So it became an intelligent process automation. So there would be decision points where the bots and the AIs would make a decision and say, well, we're matching these two transactions. It's this transaction that we think it is, rather than just giving you, a whole list of things to match against. And that was kind of the main focus for quite a long time. People were trying to get their heads around automation and how automation works within the accounting and finance process space, transactional processing. And then maybe in the corporate finance teams and the reporting teams, we were trying to work out how we use data analytics and data science. But then about a year ago, all hell broke loose because generative AI popped up. And generative AI is different. The main difference is that it's creating new content from new ways of inputting data. And we can dig into that a little bit more, but it's taking text, it's taking images, it's taking audio, video, and then being able to create new content that's similar to what you used as the sort of training data. So sorry, that was very waffly, but basically that's the difference between those capabilities. And my message is that it is here. It's no longer a hypothetical chat.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you very much, Chris. It's really great to get that perspective on it and to be able to dig deeper into that journey that has happened and is, as you say, very much still happening. So that's really helpful. Thank you. Well, it'd be great to, with that in mind, kind of dig in a bit deeper to some of those things you've been talking about, and maybe talk about some use cases that are happening right now and will be happening in time to come with automation and increasingly AI too. So yes, any thoughts on some use cases?
Yeah, this, like I said, this technology has been around for a while. So again, like if people have use cases that they want to share, because some of this has been around for 10 years, definitely in business, then do share those. So I think that the specific use cases, when you break it down, are on the automation side. You have things like integration, APIs, so standard ways of connecting machines. That is an automation and integration, rather than you copy and pasting things, into different spreadsheets. You're simply just linking things now in a standard, trusted, reliable way. And that at a very basic level is a type of process data integration automation. Then you have the sort of process automation, and we could sort of talk about a month-end journey for this. So rather than you having to receive files and put all this stuff together in a spreadsheet to create a report, you can just have, is that your cat in the back?
You can hear my cat. I'm very sorry.
Wants to get involved in the month-end reporting.
Yes,
wow, trained it well. You've got, you basically have a feed into the data into your spreadsheet, so you don't have to do all that cuts and pasting and mucking around. Next, we've got the sort of process sort of automation side of things. So the easiest way to talk about this is the matching. So if you have reconciliations, huge spreadsheets full of reconciliations, you need to match everything off. And I'm sure people have come across this in their accounting software, where we're matching bank statements very easily now with a click of a button, and it suggests something or predicts what that invoice or bill should be or receipt should be, and then you just simply click the button, and then it helps you reconcile. But those use cases are much bigger in business, where you could have millions of transactions needed to be matched at a month end. So a use case there would be using things like documentation on AP, PO matching, where you would have, rather than sitting down at month end saying, are these POs right? Have you receipted the right amount? Is it right to accrue this amount against this PO? It would all be matched for you, and you would only be using your time to look at the exceptions that the automation, the RPA, threw out. But that sort of automation is based on rules. It's based on a standard process. As I said, following the keystrokes of that robot, almost using your keyboard for you. But when it hits a blocker, it will throw out the exception for the human to get involved and to have a look at it and to say, right, okay, we don't have a match here, or we've got an anomaly, or we couldn't match a supplier name to the PO, so you've got to look at it. But even things like that at volume can really make a massive difference in terms of time. And I'd say even in the smaller organizations, minutes add up to hours, add up to days, right? And if you can save a day a month, it's still worth going after. I think people, think big with this stuff, which is great, but actually anyone who just wants to get home on time during a month end, that's a good enough goal for me, So that's kind of the use case on the matching side of things. Machine learning is a bit more interesting, I would say, because it starts getting into the insights side of business, which is where I originally come from, BI and analytics and data viz. You're predicting the future based on data that you've had before. So this is being used heavily in banks and fraud. It's obviously being used in audit now, and I'm sure people on the call have used it as well, where you're trying to find those outliers that don't quite match, the transactional process, or the regular amounts, or the journals that are normally posted. And in reporting, you're replacing kind of the manual forecasts, the driver-based forecasts that are, again, quite sort of modeling intensive. You might need a modeler to create these things. It's replacing those sorts of efforts with predictions. So your revenue forecast should be this. Now people have a bit of a trust issue with some of this output, but once they get their heads around it is actually more accurate than what the humans are producing sometimes, then they're happy to go with it. And then Gen AI, there's the jury's out. I think my take would be it's definitely going to be of help. It's definitely going to be useful. But at this point, it's almost like a helpful intern. If you're going to start using this within your team, it's not necessarily telling you anything you don't already know. It just might not be for you to do. It's for someone else to do. So it's a great way of delegating things at the moment. And the use cases there, and I can go on to, I've created a GPT, but the use cases there are more on the creative industries at the moment, because the way of creating copy is so easy, because it's literally trained on the entire internet when it comes to copywriting. So you can create, articles on how to automate month end, by simply putting in a simple prompt. And we can come on to prompt engineering and what that is. You can ask it to create images, because it's obviously trained on all the images that are there, but all using words and the text. And this is a public thing now. So Microsoft released Copilot to all of their Microsoft products. I think it was only about a month ago, but it was released to all of the MVPs, the sort of senior guys. And I think we have one on this call as well, Mark Proctor. So it was released to them a lot earlier, so they could play with it. But then it was released into all Microsoft products, and it's on every roadmap. I think you mentioned before the call, Sage now has a Copilot within their system. And Google are trying to fight back because they started with Bard. It was pretty crap, to be honest, and now they've renamed it to Gemini and they've relaunched it to try and get ahead of the curve there. So yeah, but there's, you can see immediately, right? There's quite a lot going on in this space. So it's fair enough that people are scratching their heads on how to use AI.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that. I think that's part of it, isn't it? The AI is, like you said, it starts such a catch-all phrase, isn't it? It's sort of put against so much right now. And there's that creep that it's embedded in lots of software that we're using, whether it's work and also personal. On our phones, there's a fair amount of AI or things that are maybe labeled as AI in terms of facial recognition when we, log into our phone, and voice prompts if we use a Google speaker or Alexa speaker and so on. There's all sorts of ways that AI is all around us and we maybe don't realize. But yeah, it's finding out how it's useful, isn't it? And I really like your analogy of the helpful intern, because I think that's part of it. And I think with all this hype about it, is actually, is it taking our job? Well, I think at the moment it's definitely finding ways we can use it, really fitting with what you were talking about with automation, really, to save time, isn't it? To make processes quicker. I was just talking to someone in a course I was running yesterday, actually, who was telling me about how they'd used ChatGPT to generate some VBA code, a macro for Excel. And it was just to be able to automate a process, like you were saying, finding those small things you can automate. It was a weekly process they're doing every week on a Wednesday afternoon. They have to compare two reports, find overdue payments, and then sort out the overdue payments. And it was just comparing two Excel spreadsheets. They got the macro set up. ChatGPT came up with it in seconds. That one they did get working. So a few minutes later, bingo, they had the process sorted. And they've got a button to press to be able to repeat that each week rather than spend an hour setting it up, comparing, filtering, and so on. So I think there are those pockets where we can use it, can't we? And that's a nice example of bringing automation and generative AI together. So I think that kind of fits in with that helpful intern piece, doesn't it? It's definitely not taking our job just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think, I think people worry about change. I sometimes say, humans and change are like cats and water. If you've got a cat, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's just an instinctive sort of concern that this means something bad, and we have to manage that. And that's why a lot of what I talk about isn't actually on the technical side at all. In fact, if anyone wants technical knowledge on this, talk to Mark Proctor, who's on this call, or Louisa. I'm more managing the hype and the people first approach, because nothing happens without the people being on side. That's my experience of 20 years in transformation. And if you start pushing technology first, it doesn't go very far. So I think, yes, there's a lot of concern around how we use this, and but arguably we should never start with the tools anyway. And I know we talked about this before, it's like, is it just a new shiny tool? What do you want to do with it? And trying to find nuggets. And in the accounting industry, I still think it's fairly easy. It's like, if you want to get home on time at month end, what do we need to do? What people need to be involved in, what process, what KPIs, what outcomes are you focused on, blah, 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 blah. And you work from that point and then find tech and solutions to go with it. If you start with the technology first, not only is it really mind-blowing, it's great to inspire people, as this conversation hopefully does, but you can go into the weeds. And I was on a podcast recently, and I was interviewing someone who is great on this. I think it's called Technology for Finance, a guy called Adam Shilton. He lost months of his life trying to understand the evolving generative AI landscape. And it's moving so fast that you can't. It's, and I think, what I just mentioned, if you were to learn Bard, which was part of Google, no matter how bad it was, it's now changed to Gemini. It's now expanded its set. We don't even know where this has been embedded in their tool set right now. It's evolving so fast, and as soon as the training manual's written, it's changed again. But we kind of know this because it's happened many times before. The RPA, when the robotic process automation sort of boom started, let's say 10 years ago, everyone tried to understand it, and we were all trying to get training courses together, and we were all trying to sort of use it as best as possible. But what happened was, we just ended up relying on the people approach. So what do we want to change? How can we embed this? Okay, let's get the right tool then, and then let's worry about the training at that point. Because you just simply can't keep up with this. It's moving way too fast, I think. But don't be scared of it, because it's a great opportunity to improve what we do, and you decide. I've always say we're the masters of the technology, not the other way around, and that is true. Even though this feels like magic right now, I'm sure I could go in there and put a picture of Gareth into ChatGPT's DALL-E, OpenAI's DALL-E, and ask them to, create an image of him talking at, an accountancy conference with all these people around it in this color, and work it, and it would be a fine art piece by the end of the day. That's just mind blowing. It's like magic, but it's not magic. It's maths, algorithms, data, and we need to focus on what we want to change rather than thinking it is magic.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it, isn't it? Rather than getting put off by the tech and blown away by it, and then not being able to see the wood from the trees, like you were saying with the weeds. And was it Adam Shilton you were saying, getting lost in months of their life and kind of bogged down with generative AI and how it's changing? It's hard to keep up, isn't it? So where is a good place to start then, do you think, with everything that's going on right now?
Great question. I think so. Generally, do not start with the technology. Okay, start with the problems that you have in your business. Start with understanding what you want to do with it. So I always talk about sort of outcomes and KPIs first, and that might be looking at your organization in a slightly different way. So the big one in the past has always been, do you close in 5 days? Or how long does your audit take? Yeah. Or how many hours are you putting into journals or corrective work? How many hours can we save with automation? And I think you need to really kind of understand the pain points within your organization and how you want to change those. And that's a conversation with the team. No money needs to be spent on that at that point in time. It's just really understanding how you want to make the change. Then very quickly you'll get to conversations around, well, this process doesn't work, or this process is broken, or what's the motivator for everyone to make that change? And you then start to form these sort of project conversations. But the really important thing is that you're including as many people as possible, and not just from within your team. You're asking, sales and marketing, like what data do they have? What data could you use? How is our PO process, for instance, as I've seen someone comment on it in the chat, impacting their business and impacting how they do business? Can we do more sort of business partnering, or can we sort of support them in a different way, rather than just bringing them a spreadsheet to sign off or something? So, and you notice I haven't mentioned ChatGPT or tech at all. So you go on that journey. A lot of people in business finance are being trained in Kaizen now. So the sort of, the continuous improvement methodology, small changes to your processes, because it's the bit that comes before the technology. You don't want to speed up a broken wheel. So you need to fix the process first, then start looking at the technology to improve it, to automate it. So I would say, go on a journey with your team, have the discussion, come to things like this, and then have the same discussion with your team, and then go on that journey. Last but not least is the technology, but do talk about the technology, because it is inspiring. It is really interesting to see how we use ChatGPT, how you use all of those tools out there, how you use Copilot in Excel, but only to inspire people and to kind of give a view of a direction of where we're going. And if you find a few people who really, really want to go on that journey, then okay, go with them and let them get technical. But even the most sort of avid Excel fans, right? Let's talk about the technology that's always been there. They probably don't know 80% of what Excel can do, you know? And there's only probably the top 5% who even get close to that. And I was at the Global Excel Summit recently. It's a great event. And even within that room, full of experts, there was a small percentage who kind of really knew everything about what was going on. So, you know, you're never going to be able to nail that technology piece. So don't start there. You've got to fit it to, you know, the demand that you have internally. But, you know, have a play.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I think it fits with what you were talking about month end, wasn't it? Because obviously that can be quite a big pain point there. And like you say, with Excel, there's lots of things that we don't know about. And actually with Mark Proctor in the audience today, we've got Power Query is certainly one thing that Mark's very much helped us learn about as a way to be able to help with that process, for example. So it's knowing about the tools, isn't it? And how we can use them, as you say, find the problem first of all, and then we can think how to fix it rather than getting bogged down with the tech. That's brilliant. And actually on that note, I see we've got a question from Neil. So thanks very much, Neil. We've got a question about some machine learning tools at the kind of ledger reviews we mentioned. Have you got any thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, I'm very careful about recommending tools, and I don't really recommend tools. But we do have a list that I can send to you. And it's for all the reasons that I've just said, right? The technology generally is probably hitting, I don't know, 80-90% of the average person's requirements. But you're not just buying the technology. So I'm not going to recommend a tool. You're buying the partnership, you're buying the match in culture, you're buying the people who are going to implement it with your team and the culture there. And the reason why I am a bit like that, and apologies, that's not very helpful, is because you really need to, it might be that you want to buy a tool that embeds directly into Excel because everyone's Excel mad, or you might want to buy a tool that isn't in Excel ribbon, it actually sits outside, and you have expertise who kind of use that. It may be that you've already got a great ERP and you just want to put some, automation tool over the top. And I mentioned things like Blackline and documentation, things like that. So you do need to put in a bit of work when it comes to selecting the vendor. But I would just quickly send you the link to our Tech 100.
Thanks, Chris. I kind of understand your position quite clearly. I think the challenge for we're a big organisation. So I have a team of something like 70 people in the finance team, whether that's processing, AP, AR, general ledger, and so on. And we've dipped our toe into this world. Particularly, we're looking at some RPA. And the challenge is that I can find half a dozen people that I can talk to about RPA, and with the level of knowledge that we have as a team, everything seems very shiny and glossy. You start talking about some of the commercials, you get hugely different commercials. Come from a world where wouldn't necessarily go with the cheapest because it's the cheapest, but because you want the best outcome at the end of the day. But it actually becomes really quite daunting at that point in the process, because you are talking about some reasonably significant investments, even for a larger organization. So I don't know any further advice you could give people on the call to how to go about that process. And I fully understand what you've been saying about finding the right partner, the right kind of cultural fit, etc., etc. But nonetheless, it's pretty daunting.
Actually, I think that's a great point Neil's making, Chris. And I thought I might just share. I was at a lunch in Huddersfield a couple of weeks ago with 3 local firms, relatively small practices, regional practices. And they were sort of talking about their challenge was they use some of the accountancy software platforms to aid their automation. I won't name names, but they were sharing a frustration that there was a particular platform that a couple of them used that was extremely slow to adopt AI and cloud. And you know, they felt they were probably too small to make an investment themselves. They were quite reliant on the vendor they were using, and that vendor wasn't really moving as quickly as they would like. So I think that feeds into what Neil was saying around, particularly for smaller businesses, this is potentially quite an intimidating investment to make.
Yeah, it is. And the first thing to say, Neil, is that you are not alone. I think, you know, we actually did a talk last week with a guy called Mark Skinner, who's director of accounting at Immerset. And he said exactly the same thing. He said, you know, Chris, we went on your journey. We did the people first thing. We got the buy-in, blah, blah, blah. And then like the longest period and the most frustrating period was actually the vendor selection. And actually I'll send you the link to that, because it might be helpful to hear what he said, which was, you know, you have to do a thorough vendor selection, and it just simply needs to be married to your requirements. And I really don't think it comes down to cost. And what I mean by that is you could find a perfect partner for your solution that isn't particularly well known, and as a result, the price point's quite low. And you'll be like, well, why is it so cheap? It's because it's not legacy or first generation software. It's not a global player with global pricing structures. It's just someone who can do the job for you. And that's the market that we're in. You know, everyone's sort of experienced the SaaS app store kind of approach. You know, you can literally, you know, download an app, you can check it, you can see whether it's going to work for you. You could probably do a pilot within a matter of weeks. And then if it doesn't work, you can unpick it. And I think what we also see quite a lot with that approach is the psychological safety isn't there, because they are worried that they're going to get it wrong or it's going to fail. But that is completely okay in this space. And if you can parallel run some of your matching with a new product, that really is only taken a couple of weeks to sort of set up and spin up and get something going, then it's okay to then walk away from it. And Mark actually said something very similar. You know, he started a project, it wasn't going very well. And instead of going on that sort of fixed mindset, oh, we've got a contract in place and we have to go and deliver it, he just stopped it and said, no, we're going to not do that. We're going to start something else and go again. So I think there's a lot in there about, you know, finding the right vendor in the right way, matching it to your requirements, having the confidence to turn it on and off as if it was a sort of SaaS product, which is very possible now with cloud technology. Dare I say it, also getting referral, because if someone's done it, it will just give a bit of confidence in that decision. And as much as I don't refer people in that way, someone in the community, the Gen CFO community, is standing by every one of the technologies on our Tech 100. So they will say, I've used UiPath, it helped me do this, and you could do the same. It's not a recommendation, and it's only an opinion, not advice. But I do think that referral can also help. And it's a minefield. You know, there are literally thousands of products out there, and you're never going to get to them. You've just got to go on that sort of structured vendor journey.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much indeed, Chris. And I thought it was interesting what you were saying about that sort of stop and start approach in terms of trying things out. It reminds me of that sort of concept of fail fast and fail smart. If you think something isn't working, stop it, learn from it, and then, you know, try the next thing, and then sort of keep going that way. And it kind of fits in with automation as well, doesn't it, in terms of, you know, getting things going. It won't work perfectly, and actually seeing what Kirsty said in the chat as well about some creases that they're ironing out in their PO process. It's that sort of keeping going, remember the end goal, the benefits that we're planning to get from it, and keep going. And actually, the emotional cycle of change as well. We have to get through those barriers and those pain points, don't we, and keep on going and learn and get to where we're planning to get to. But yeah, it takes time for sure, doesn't it? Well, thank you very much indeed. You know, time has flown. It's been a really fascinating conversation, and thanks very much for everyone else who joined in the chat and everything. It's been really, really great to discuss all of this. So thanks very much indeed. Just as a wrap up, I've just got a slide I'm just going to share, which just talks about some of the things going on at First Intuition, and I think Chris is going to mention a couple of bits along a similar line as well from the Gen CFO point of view. So hopefully you can see the right screen. No, you can't, can you? Oh dear, sorry, that's a bit useless of me. It didn't give me the choice that I wanted, so just bear with me 1 second. User error there. Let's try that one again. It's definitely screen one I want. Hopefully that has worked, and you can see my screen. It should be showing. Yeah, that's worked now. Our next digital lunch and learn is on data analytics. What's going next? We're going to discuss data insights and mention tools like Power BI, and it is with Mark Proctor, who's on our call today. So very much looking forward to that. That's on 1st of May. So do come and join us for that session. We've also got some courses we're running. We've got Automate Excel with Power Query running on 19th of March, again with Mark. So we're really looking forward to that. And we are launching a Power BI course too. So really keen for anyone who's interested to reach out and get involved. It'd be really great to get people on that. And we've also run lots of bespoke talks for teams and training days on topics such as AI and automation, data analytics, digital skills, growth mindset. So yeah, please keep in contact. I just wanted to share that. And then over to Chris just to mention a bit about what's going on with you.
Yeah, just very briefly, if people want to sort of see the talks that I'm talking about, I've just put the link in there. But my big plug, which hopefully is everyone's interested in, is for the Digital Finance Function Awards. Now, First Intuition were shortlisted, and who knows, could be a winner this year for their digital program. But it's really to help celebrate everyone who's going on this journey, making a bit of a change, whether it's small people, organizational, structural change, wholesale transformation, just recommending a tool that you might like. It's all about, the Jennies, as we call them now. The digital finance function was quite a mouthful, so we just call it the Jennies now, just like the Oscars. It's in Soho. The application process is open now, and I've just popped the link in there. And we would love to have First Intuition community sort of winning on the night. Yeah, they're a great partner and doing great things on the digital side. So yeah, it'd be great to celebrate with you guys.
Brilliant. Well, I'm very much looking forward to that event. It was a fantastic event last year for sure. So thank you very much indeed. Well, thank you very much to everyone for joining us. Have a great rest of your days. And if you listen to this on catch up, yeah, likewise. And hope to see you on 1st of May when we're going to talk all about data analytics. Thank you very much, everybody.